Hello BookTube! I recently made a video going over my favorite video game series, especially ranking them based on how unique and intriguing their respective storytelling methods were. The Fromsoftware published Dark Souls trilogy and developed Dark Souls trilogy easily took first place in that ranking, and now I'm back to rank not only the Dark Souls trilogy, but also all of the recent games Fromsoftware has published in this same style, often referred to as like the Soulsborne genre. I will mention which version, what level of completion, and number of times I've played for all of these entries. And I will be pretty light on spoilers throughout. All that said, let's get into it. In 7th place, I've got Demon's Souls. For the PS3, this was the 5th game I played and the 4th game that I beat in the series. I've played this game twice, the PS3 version both times. And neither time I didn't really spend too much time worrying about world tendency, and I've still never killed the optional dragon mini bosses. So as I just mentioned, I started this one 5th, but I beat it 4th. See, my brother had Bloodborne with him in a different town. Right after I had just gotten about halfway through that masterpiece, my brother took the PS4 away. And so I looked at what other Soulsborne games I could play on what consoles I still had around, and lo and behold, I find Demon's Souls. I was already pretty used to this series, so this one seemed particularly easy or a little more straightforward to me, especially once I got the hang of it. I think some of the gimmicky bosses are cool and fun, and some of them feel just a little bit lazy. Like, the design of the boss is cool, usually, but the mechanics aren't necessarily always the most captivating. I do like the variety of areas, though, and I like that finding and unlocking shortcuts probably matters maybe the most in this game. This one, or this is either the main game where shortcuts matter, or like the second most game where shortcuts matter most. So even if some of the mechanics are a bit tedious, the game isn't at the same challenging bar as later entries, and even if the bosses are pretty hit or miss, there still is plenty to enjoy here, especially I hear if you check out the polished remake on the PS5. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it looks gorgeous. Demon's Souls is still a great game, but moving on to bigger and better things. And in 6th place, I'm going to put Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I played this for the PS4. This was the 6th game I played in the series. I've played this game twice, once with the regular Ishin Sword Saint endings, with one of those endings, and once with the Ishin Ashina, kind of burning Ashina ending. I was so freaking excited for this game, and it definitely didn't disappoint me. This was the first time I had to wait for one of these games to come out because I got hooked on this series a year or two after Dark Souls 3 came out. And I was a little bit caught off guard at first by just how different this controls than the rest of the series, but eventually as I got into the groove, I found that different was not necessarily bad. In fact, people could and have made cases for this being the single best combat of the series, and I can definitely see where they're coming from. Some of the best bosses, if a few get repeated too many times, one of the steepest learning curves, some of the most beautiful areas, Fountainhead Palace and Senpu Temple, are just absolutely gorgeous. And then the Guardian 8 bosses are some of my favorites in the whole series. All that said, I can't rank this higher because while the mechanical differences are still very good, I think I personally prefer how the other games play in the series. Alright, moving on to 5th place. I'm going to put Dark Souls 3 for the PS4 and Xbox One. This is those are the consoles that I've played it on. This is the 3rd game I played in the series. I've played this version sort of a little more than twice. The 2nd time passing the controller back and forth after every death with my brother. My first playthrough, I made sure to solo every boss in the game, and I purchased separately and played through both the Ashes of Arendelle and the Ring City DLC expansions. I hope I don't get hate for this. Right off the bat, though, I'll say that I hope I don't get hate for ranking Dark Souls 3 so low. But I really do want to say that even though I rank this game in my bottom 3, it's easily my pick for the best collection of bosses of all these games. Unfortunately, though, as fascinating and rich as those boss encounters and experiences are, it's also probably the world setting I enjoy the look of least. And I find areas like High Wall of Lothric and the Catacombs a bit of a slog to get through, and that's not even to mention the more like universally disliked and frustrating Farron Keeps and Smoldering Lakes of the game. The lore here, especially the new stuff like with the twins and the mysteries of the Profane Capital and Pontiff Sullivan and Aldrich, all great, tremendous stuff. And I will shout out Cathedral of the Deep and all areas from both DLCs as quite outstanding. Yes, I even like Ariandel. I think it's a pretty underrated DLC. I also did more PvP here than ever before, and I did that as a Blade of the Dark Moon. So the bosses and a few great things I just listed are all enough to keep it out of the bottom 2 places, but my top 4 are all genuinely unique experiences, more unique I think than this, and they adhere to similar mechanics and design philosophy, but they break away in fascinating and more innovative narrative ways than that make me enjoy those games just a little bit more. In 4th place, right in the middle here, I'm going to put Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the Sin for the PS4 and Xbox One. This is the second game I played in the series. I played this version twice, both times soloing second time soloing every boss in my second playthrough, except for one. I'll mention that down below. And those bosses that I was able to solo the second time include everything on the Crown of Sunken King, Crown of Old Iron King, and Crown of Iron King trilogy of downloadable content expansions. And now Dark Souls 2 is understandably some people's least favorite game. But I love this story. The mystery of exactly when and where we are, the subtle references to the first game, the sheer scope of the base game, not to mention the size and creative level designs of all 3 DLCs, and the sheer number of boss encounters, even though some are pretty rotten. All of that means that I, for one, cannot rank this game any lower. Let's see, other stuff I can say that might help boost this game in people's eyes. I think the Gutter and Black Gulch, while not great, are preferable to me than Blighttown was. I think Earthen Peak is fun. I like the idea of the Pursuer showing up randomly. Lost Bastille and No Man's Wharf are 2 really cool early game areas, particularly the latter, No Man's Wharf, with the whole torch mechanic and those kind of Stranger Things looking monsters. I really like that whole thing. All of the DLCs, they're gorgeous. The story is fascinating, and I love how it is only loosely tied into the first game and most explicitly tied in to stuff about Manus. Who's a character from the first game's downloadable content, so not even the main thing, the main story. The crypts are super cool, undead crypts, before I get too far away and forget to mention other areas that I love. Love that spot, love that place, with the Velstadt boss fight at the end of it. I will say I don't want this in my top 3 though, because there are so many painful boss run-ups that just really suck the fun out of going back time and time again to try those more difficult bosses. I'd said one of my favorite memories from both times I played this was actually summoning a lot of the NPC summons in the Frigid Waste or Frozen Outskirts, I forget the name of that area, in the Ivory King DLC. And so like 3 or 4 of us were just charging from cover to cover through the blizzard, dodging enemies, making it onto that like ice bridge right near the end, waiting for each other, and then going through the Fog Gate, facing Blood and Solin together. This is the only boss that I haven't soloed in the main Dark Souls trilogy, but just facing those 2 bosses together, super adrenaline pumping awesomeness, making the most, I think, of an otherwise kind of really bad area in this reskin of a boss fight. But what can I say? I had fun. Even at that moment in the game, which I think would be a lot of people's least favorite like time in the whole franchise, playing through anything in the whole franchise. Anyway, so that's 4th place, Dark Souls 2, specifically Scholar of this First Sin version. I haven't played just the original version. Then in third place, I'm going to put Bloodborne for the PS4. This is the fourth game I started, and as I mentioned before when I was talking about Demon's Souls, I played that when I was in the middle of Bloodborne. So this is the fourth one I started and the fifth one I finished. I played Bloodborne twice, one time including all of the unique Chalice dungeon bosses and soloing all of those fights, and I've played the Old Hunters DLC expansion both times as well. I go back and forth on this one because sometimes I actually haven't ranked Bloodborne this high at number 3, although I'd say this is about as high as I'll go here, putting it at third place. Again, similar to Sekiro, I think I just like the more medieval European fantasy style of the other games with those occasional Eastern influences. I think I just like those settings just a little bit more. But this one, and it's sort of like Flintlock style, gothic horror fantasy and Lovecrafty and cosmic horror stuff. None of that, honestly, I don't think any of that would have been enough of a setting or like a pull to bring me in and like to really sell me on the game if I hadn't heard about it, or if it wasn't attached to this series. I probably wouldn't have even played this, to be honest, if it wasn't a Fromsoftware game. But the team over there in Miyazaki, as always, they did such an amazing job making me fall in love with all the elements of this game's beautiful, lush, and terrifying setting. And then the scaled-down RPG elements were actually, I thought, a nice, more streamlined change of pace from the Dark Souls games. I also like tinkering with my weapons and such. I love discovering the secrets and hidden optional areas. The brain suckers and winter lanterns are probably tied as two of the most terrifying things I've ever had to encounter in any video games. So hats off to you, FromSoft, for crafting these brilliant abominations. And while the bosses are fun, I honestly think I prefer like the Gehrman and Maria type boss over like the Ludwig's and Cleric Beast type boss. And I wish there were more humaniform sort of bosses. Not exactly hunters, not exactly like a PvP fight, but maybe only as like wild in scale as Orphan of Kos. Like that's about as big as I enjoy my bosses, like my favorite bosses. Super difficult. Orphan of Kos was super difficult, but one of the most rewarding bosses ever, closing out one of my favorite areas in one of my favorite DLCs of the whole series. What a beautiful game. The Chalice dungeons do get a bit tedious though. Anyway, moving on to second place with top two. If you've been keeping track, you know there are only two that we have left. We haven't had the most recent one, but here it is in second place. I've put Elden Ring, specifically the version for the Xbox One. This was the seventh and most recent game I've played through. Naturally, I haven't done all there is to do. However, I managed to confront most, if not all, I think, of the main bosses using Spirit Ashes for help on some of the really early ones, and then later some of the really late ones. Anyone who's played this will understand what I mean when I say it feels like both the game I've spent the most time in and the game I know the least about. It's just so massive. It probably literally is the most hours I've put into any of these games, even combining the like multiple times I've played a lot of the earlier ones. But there's still so much optional content and things that after finishing it, I was like, oh shoot, I never did go back to that place to explore more when I was always saying that I really needed to at some point. I just never got around to it and totally forgot about it in the excitement of the end game and some other new area that I found later on. So I can't put this in first. And I think part of it is because I haven't explored all and seen all there is to see. Also, I think I leaned a bit too heavily on spirit summon help early on without really trying to force myself to learn how glorious and how much fun the combat could be in this game. Then, about the middle 100 hours or so of my playtime, I finally stopped using the Spirit Ashes. But then again, the last few hours, I had to bring out my Mimic tier summon for Melania and a couple of the other endgame bosses. I plan to try to solo everything on a successive playthrough, but starting up again is honestly a bit of a daunting task. But really, what a magnificent game. I know it's probably not for everyone, but I think it's for people who really want a challenge and that really want exploration and the sense of fear and risk that comes from treading into what might be a higher level area that maybe you're not really so ready for. And this is also for people who really want a game's story to be thought-provoking, not just through bizarre character interactions, but also through just looking at the architecture, the topography, just taking it all in and trying to come to your own conclusions about what happened here. Was this related to one of those god characters they were talking about? All these questions are constantly swirling around in your mind as you're exploring just this massive world. There are some brilliantly wild monster designs in here too. I nearly pooped myself the first time I came across one of those giant worm face enemies. But then even the most disturbing areas could provide hours of engrossing fun, no matter how disturbing or unsettling they were. And stumbling on an area rich with its own lore, seemingly rather separate from most of everything else in the game. I remember very fondly my first time in a town where I had to unlock some blue doors. That was a blast. I remember emerging from a narrow canyon once to find this poison-infested kind of swamp of a castle ruin that took me hours to explore. So much fun. Such a great little 2 or 3 hour adventure of gameplay. That was just one day that I hopped on. And all of the legacy dungeons provide that classic Dark Souls experience. They really do. Such an amazing game, and it might be my favorite if nostalgia and my personal journey with just video gaming in general wasn't such a big part of why I love this series. That said, in first place, Dark Souls Remastered for the PS4 and Xbox One. This was the first game I played in the series. I played this version twice, soloing every boss in my second playthrough, including the Artorias of the Abyss DLC expansion. In the summer of 2017, I just really hadn't played very many video games that hooked me recently at that point. Sure, my brother got me to play through the madness of the Kingdom Hearts franchise the previous year, and I was replaying Uncharted 4 a couple times that year as well, but I just really wasn't really drawn to anything. And my brother kept telling me how great these Dark Souls games were. He was really excited for the first game's remaster to come out. And so I had a small drink one night and just thought, what the heck, I'll give this first game a try. And all throughout the tutorial area, I was enjoying it okay, but I didn't really love it yet. And then making it through that area, I got an inkling of the excitement I'd learned to know and love, but not totally enthralled at that point. And then I felt a little more excitement after I realized that I technically could keep trying those ghosties or those spooky skeletons, but I was actually supposed to go up, not down, leaving Firelink Shrine for the first time. And then, and most people probably can anticipate, the next big moment for me that I'm about to mention, I made my way through what felt like a sizable area, kicked down a ladder, and discovered my first genuinely helpful shortcut, and I was hooked. This game wasn't all that hard if only you had the patience and sense of humor to make it through the harder, more frustrating stuff. Once or twice, or maybe a handful of times, you could eventually continue to make the game a little easier on yourself with shortcuts, with upgrades, whatever. And then, of course, in such a desolate, depressing world, coming across characters such as Solaire or especially Sigmar of Katarina just make all the difference. What an outstanding yet mysterious set of NPCs. What an outstanding collection of areas, all unique and rich, except for maybe something like Demon Ruins, but still so much fun. Also, just thinking right now about everything wild that you have to do to go, or to get into the painted world is ridiculous, but a whole mini game adventure kind of in its own right. The big turn of what you can reveal about Andorlando is so freaking cool. I went into Darkroot Basin before I fully explored the parish for the first time, and so I didn't get that one really big Firelink Shrine connection yet through the parish, but I did get the amazing reveal about the places that the Darkroot Basin was connected to. It all just blew me away and totally reinvigorated my love for gaming. I love this game series so much, and Dark Souls Remastered is the game that started my adventures with Fromsoftware, and it holds a really special place in my heart and in my ranking for that reason. All that said, thank you so much for watching. I'm thinking about doing an area-by-area analysis, trying to pick apart the atmospheric storytelling of the different regions in these wonderful games. So if you'd like to see a series like that, an analytical sort of series like that, please let me know in the comments below, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already to get notifications about when any such videos might be coming out in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.